5 seconds to go. Start. The Act does not specifically provide that wages to be paid to men and women workers should be equal. Consequently, different rates of wages were laid down in several cases at the time of initial fixation of minimum wages. Besides, there is no restriction on the fixation of different rates of wages for men and women in the sectors not covered as a result of bipartite or tripartite negotiations, or arbitration awards could be different for men and women for similar jobs. While over the years there has been some narrowing down of the difference in wages of men and women workers' wages, disparities on grounds of sex still exist in the country even after years of the ratification of the International Labour Organization Convention. The National Commission on Labour, while noting that the fixation of statutory minimum wages has tended to narrow the gap between men and women, observed that wages discrimination between men and women still prevails in certain sectors like agriculture and unorganized industries. The Committee on Status of Women in India also strongly recommended legislative action in this regard to provide for equal pay for equal work. Honorable members of this august House have on several occasions expressed their feelings on this matter and have urged immediate and effective remedial action. The matter was discussed at the 25th session of the Labour Ministers' Conference held in September last year. It was unanimously agreed that the states which had not so far implemented fully the International Labour Organization Convention, both in letter and spirit, should do so by taking appropriate measure to fix wages accordingly to occupations within a period of 3 months by not later than 6 months. It was also suggested that statutory provision be made to prevent bipartite arguments fixing different wages rates for men and women workers. To give effect to the constitutional provision as well as ensure stricter conformity to the International Labour Organization Convention, the Equal Remuneration Ordinance was promulgated by the President. It was much needed and overdue measure designed to benefit a large number of women labor, and it was felt that any delay in promulgating the ordinance would affect adversely the interests of women workers. It was also felt that it will be in the fitness of things to bring forward this measure to implement the provision of the Constitution in the year 2012, which was being celebrated as the International Labour Year. It is proposed to replace the ordinance by an Act of Parliament. So, the bill was introduced in the Rajya Sabha. I am very happy to have this opportunity to meet you. Great responsibility rests on the shoulders of our civil services, particularly the Indian Administrative Service. Ours is a large country characterized by great diversity, great complexity, and the unity and integrity of India has to be the primary concern of all those involved in processes of governance. This does not mean that we should lose sight of the peculiar circumstances in which your respective states may be placed. I think ours is a unique administrative setup. It is a federal setup, and services like the Indian Administrative Service perform that twin combination of concern with local circumstances and at the same time wider concern that these local problems are resolved in a manner which strengthens the bonds of unity and strengthens the nation's integrity. Of all the services in our country, the Indian Administrative Service has performed its role with greatest efficiency, integrity, and commitment to national values. I said that ours is a country of great diversity and great complexity. We have in our country religions, all the great religions represented in our society. We have also large number of groups of people who are underprivileged and who have been discriminated against for centuries, and when the Constitution of India was being drawn up, the founding fathers of our republic took it upon themselves to make up for those centuries of inequity by giving them a privileged position when it comes to admission to civil services are concerned, when it comes to giving them a share in processes of governance through participation in the state legislatures and parliament. It is therefore very essential that our civil servants should be aware of the extreme complexity of managing an entire country of India's diversity. I would therefore urge all of you that though you must specialize in acquiring a deep understanding of the problem faced by your respective states, you must also delve deep into the whole process of nation building in a country of India's size, India's diversity, and India's complexity. I would also say that we are living in a world where human knowledge is growing at an unprecedented pace. Therefore, your stint at the academy cannot and should not involve an end of the thirst for acquisition of knowledge. I think our training modules suggest that life has to be one of continuous process. Our country has been growing at a handsome rate in the last 15 years ever since the reform program was launched. Our growth rate has averaged above 6 to 6.5%. In recent years, we have improved upon that performance. Our growth rate is now around 7.5 to 8%, and we can increase this growth rate, and we need that growth because it is only in a rapidly expanding economy that we can find meaningful solutions to the problems of acute poverty, deprivation, which still characterizes many parts of our country. And if growth is not there, the whole process of redistribution of incoming wealth becomes a zero sum game, and when social processes become zero sum games, they give rise to great degree of anger, frustration, and therefore we need this vibrant growth to provide the wherewithal in which redistributing processes can become a positive sum game and not a zero sum game. And therefore, understanding of the process of growth, particularly paying attention to the need of rural development, paying particular attention to the delivery of basic social services such as health, education, or the management to the municipal and panchayati raj institutions, all these are integral to our understanding of the processes of growth, processes of change, and I sincerely hope that you will take permanent interest in all these processes of nation building. When I look at the civil servants in the British time, there is one thing which strikes me. Many of them, although they came to our country from far away distant land, many of them spent a lot of time in understanding the sociology and economics of how India's rural dynamic works. I think of late, probably because people do not stay in jobs long enough. Therefore, I think that depth of knowledge that our civil servants need to understand processes of change, particularly in the rural sector, the problems of disadvantaged community, scheduled castes, scheduled tribes, they do not receive the attention that they deserve. That is why you have tensions in rural India, the Naxalite problems. These are problems which have several dimensions. A law and order dimension is important, and no state can really neglect the enforcement of law and order and also enforcement of the rule of law in our country. But you must also recognize that there are, I think, underlying tensions arising out of the fact that not all sections of our society get an equitable share or the benefits of growth, benefits of development, and therefore I think you have to pay particular attention to being the custodians of the well being of the weaker sections. Stop.